So that's what happens fundamentally with the ITP condition. People can also have other symptoms that can affect them, though. So things like fatigue, stress, anxiety, depression, just living with a condition like this, as well as things affecting their work ability, their stamina, concentration issues. So the bleeding and bruising are the chief symptoms, but these other symptoms can also affect the individual suffering from this condition.
Hey everyone, this is Jonathan Marks from Go To Health. I hope you're doing well today. I want to say that I'm very thankful for the medical research and testing that is done in the United States. We are a world leader in evidence-based medicine, and that's what this show is all about. So much so that our scientific and medical community can create treatments for people with rare conditions or diseases. That's why funding for medical research is so critical to the health of our nation, and much of that funding comes from the federal government because we all have interest in helping people with even the rarest of diseases. Here's an important example. Most people consider a bruise to be a minor inconvenience. However, for people living with ITP for short, bruising can signal something far more serious. This rare condition occurs when the immune system mistakenly attacks and destroys healthy platelets in the blood, and more than 25,000 U.S. adults can benefit from advanced treatment. September marks National ITP Awareness Month, and Wayrilz, that's W-A-Y-R-I-L-Z, was just approved by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration as a novel treatment for adults with persistent or chronic ITP who have had insufficient response to earlier treatments. Wayrilz works by modulating various parts of the immune system to help address the underlying causes of the ITP, which our doctor guest will explain. With us to talk about this today is Amit Mehta, MD. He's a board-certified hematologist and medical oncologist. He's currently in private practice at Premier Hematology and Oncology in Cary, North Carolina. His primary clinical interests are in benign and malignant hematology. His clinical research has been published in a variety of academic journals, including Lancet Oncology, the Journal of the National Cancer Institute, and the Annals of Hematology. If you want to learn more about this new medicine, you can visit wayrilz.com. Before we get to Dr. Mehta, if you're enjoying the show, it would mean the world to us if you took a second to leave a 5-star review or a thumbs up on YouTube or Apple Podcast or Spotify or wherever you're listening to us. It helps more people find the show and lets us know we're on the right track. Thanks in advance. So welcome to the show, Dr. Amit Mehta. How are you today?
Good, Jonathan. Thanks for having me. Pleasure to talk to you.
Good. So tell us, what is ITP and what are some of its most common symptoms?
Yes, thanks for having me on. So ITP stands for immune thrombocytopenic purpura. Basically, it's a serious blood disorder by which one of the main cells in the human body bloodstream, called the platelet cells, can go low and even dangerously low and lead to bleeding and bruising symptoms, including even dangerous or life-threatening bleeding in some cases. So the platelet cells normally in the bloodstream protect you from bleeding and bruising, so therefore you can imagine if they go low, you don't have that same kind of defense against bleeding likelihood or bleeding symptoms. So that's what happens fundamentally with the ITP condition. People can also have other symptoms that can affect them, though. So things like fatigue, stress, anxiety, depression, just living with a condition like this, as well as things affecting their work ability, their stamina, concentration issues. So the bleeding and bruising are the chief symptoms, but these other symptoms can also affect the individual suffering from this condition.
And what warning signs should people have to know when they should go ask a doctor about this?
Yeah, so great question. One of the main symptoms and kind of ways people present to medical attention will be they have ongoing bleeding or bruising of various types. It can be anywhere in the body, bleeding from the nose. It could be blood when you go to the bathroom. It could be unexplained bruising on the body. Anywhere on the body is possible. But the key is that it's persistent and repetitive bleeding or bruising, and you don't know why it's happening. So those people that have that kind of symptom developing or presenting, one can imagine that anybody might be concerned, but I know some people who sometimes will sort of blow it off and think, oh, well, it's not too bad. But if they have unexplained, persistent bleeding or bruising happening, one should ask their medical provider, their primary care office, to recommend the appropriate testing to try to work up and find out why it's happening, because it's not a normal thing to just bleed or bruise repetitively without explanation.
Got it. And I think you just gave the answer, but what kind of doctor should I first consult if I notice these symptoms? Is it my general practitioner or a specialist?
Yeah, a great question, Jonathan. So generally, people will go to their primary care general practitioner first. Now, the specialists who focus on this condition are hematologists, blood specialists like what I am as well, but they often won't go to the hematologist as step one. Step one will typically be go to your local doctor, your primary care provider clinic, for example, and a very straightforward way, if you're having such symptoms, anybody who's watching and listening, is that if you have unexplained bleeding or bruising or persistent bleeding, or you're just worried about the symptoms you're seeing, ask them to get a blood count done, a platelet count done. So it's a single tube of blood, easily done. Any doctor's office in America can do it. Very straightforward way. And that way you will quickly know, are the platelet cells normal, not normal? What's the situation? And might this be happening, causing the symptoms that the person's experiencing?
Got it. So September is National ITP Awareness Month. I have a couple of questions. Can you say for us again slowly, what does ITP stand for? That's number one. And number two, what's happening this month for awareness?
Yes, so ITP stands for immune thrombocytopenic purpura. So that's the long medical way of saying it. Another short way is immune thrombocytopenia is also an acceptable abbreviated way to say it. ITP, of course, much easier to say in a general sense for patients and doctors for that matter. But these kind of national awareness months, because as you mentioned, September coincidentally is National ITP Awareness Month. So in my view as a physician, these kind of awareness months are great in the sense that they bring positive publicity to patients living with the condition, seeking better therapies, more effective therapies. There are also people out there, as you mentioned, about people that might have symptoms that need to find an answer. So maybe people looking for answers who have such symptoms. So it drives awareness in that general sense across the country too. And I think of it that it's also fueling research endeavors, better discoveries, better therapies, better strategies to help people across the country who may have ITP deal with it better, get more successful treatment just by this kind of National Awareness Month philosophy that's out there, which I think is good in my view as a physician.
Great. I want to ask you about the new treatment for this, but before I do, I want to learn a little bit more about ITP. Is this an autoimmune disease? Do we know what causes it? It's a rare disease, but do we know what starts it?
Yeah, also a fantastic question. And this is an area, by the way, that we've made a lot of advance just in the past several years, 6, 7, 8 years, to understand much better what's going on in the patient's body on a cell level that's become abnormal, leading to the condition. So to your question, it is fundamentally an autoimmune disorder. It's an autoimmune condition. It happens to be an autoimmune blood condition, but it's autoimmune in a general sense. So the insight we've learned in the past few years that's helped us develop better therapies is why is there autoimmunity happening resulting in low platelets that can cause dangerous bleeding? And one of the answers that's been found is that there's a particular dysregulation or imbalance of the immune system driven by certain pathways in human cells. And this one particular cell pathway especially has been found as one of the key culprits. So this pathway is called the BTK pathway, which stands for Bruton's tyrosine kinase, but again, BTK, easier to say. So the BTK pathway is one of these dysregulated, imbalanced pathways that's driving this immune dysregulation, autoimmunity in general. So now that we know better what's happening on a deeper level, now we're able to develop better therapies, test better therapies, leading to some of these new treatments like the one that just got approved that we'll discuss. But that's fundamentally what's happening. It is an autoimmune condition. We understand much more deeply why the condition is happening in the body and what's going on in the cells in the immune system causing patients to suffer from low platelets and their consequences.
So there's no lifestyle or hereditary consequence to this? I mean, is this caused by, people's backgrounds or their lifestyle at all, or is this just spontaneous?
Yeah, unfortunately, it is spontaneous. So for better or worse, it's spontaneous. There's not an inherited component or hereditary lifestyle kind of component as far as we know. So there are sometimes other nutritional factors. Somebody who has malnourishment, for example, they could have low platelets that aren't autoimmune in terms of why it's happening, but because of poor nutrition and so forth, which is a separate kind of thing, not ITP. But in general, ITP is a spontaneous, just condition that can unfortunately develop in people. And roughly about 25,000 Americans live with ITP. It's kind of a staggering number, even for me as a hematologist, thinking about how many people are affected nationally by the condition. So maybe not an enormous number of people, but definitely often enough where there are hundreds of people per state across the country affected with this condition, quite astonishingly.
Wow. So let's talk about this new therapy or treatment. It's called Wayrilz. It's Wayrilz. And if you want to learn more, you can go to wayrilz.com. I'll spell that again, Wayrilz. So tell us about this new medicine, doctor.
Yeah, so definitely an exciting breakthrough. And firstly, I'm happy to be here also as a spokesperson on behalf of Sanofi, who developed this particular medication, Wayrilz, as you mentioned. So this just got approved by the United States FDA just a couple weeks ago, and it's approved for adult patients with persistent or chronic ITP who have had an insufficient response to previous therapy. So now anybody who's perhaps been on at least one prior therapy can now get Wayrilz to help their platelet counts go up to much safer levels. So the way this medicine works is that we're using the knowledge that we've gained in recent years, like that BTK pathway, that immune imbalance dysregulation. And the Wayrilz treatment, it's a pill that can directly inhibit or counteract this particular pathway that's become imbalanced. And as a result, the patient's platelet counts can go up by successful treatment of this imbalanced pathway. So that's the idea for how it works. Like all these things, ultimately, you want to test it in clinical trials to make sure it's actually effective and not just a hypothetical kind of thing. So what was found in large phase 3 randomized trials is that Wayrilz does indeed, patients who take Wayrilz, it does indeed cause rapid and sustained platelet count improvements by taking the medication. And other things were studied on these trials also, like how other symptoms improve with treatment as well. But this just got approved by the FDA. Definitely an exciting breakthrough for us in clinical practice to help folks with ITP.
So 2 questions about this. What have been the current treatments prior to Wayrilz? What were the efforts that were made? Were they successful? And what makes Wayrilz different?
Yes, great question. So we have over the years, for decades, have known about this condition, of course, in the medical world, and we have used other therapies in practice. So there are other therapies that we have been using in practice, things like steroids and so forth. Now, what's different is that those therapies can help raise the platelet count to some degree, at least temporarily, but they weren't really getting to the root cause of the condition. So that's what's different about Wayrilz, is that now for the first time, we now know about this BTK pathway, immune imbalance that's going on a deeper level in the human body when you have ITP, and we can directly treat that problem by giving this treatment. That's the connection or breakthrough we didn't have before. We had therapies that we used to keep the platelet counts, at least temporarily, at a better level, but not to this kind of root cause kind of level. So that's what's exciting medically, what we can do now that we couldn't do before, for example.
Wonderful. And I want to go back and ask you, because this show is about evidence-based medicine, and I always try to educate our audience about evidence-based medicine. You mentioned stage 3 clinical trials. And just to educate the audience, and please add to this, doctor, or correct me, there are basically 3 stages to clinical trials. One is just seeing, is this drug of danger? And the second, and that's done on a very small number of people. And then the second is on a larger number of people, to see what kind of effects, both positive and negative, it has. And then stage 3 is, tell us about stage 3.
Yes, and you described it beautifully, by the way, as far as the earlier stage 1, stage 2, or we often say phase 1, phase 2, same thing.
Yes.
And now with the stage 3 or phase 3 clinical trials, we're testing it in a much larger group of patients. So kind of like really putting the medicine to a tough test to make sure that, okay, well, we saw a signal of benefit in smaller studies. If it's really working, it's going to work not just in 20 or 30 patients, but a few hundred patients. So that's the real test in terms of making sure it truly works the way we believe the early signals in earlier trials are showing benefit potentially. So that's the phase 3 randomized study. Also, what's done with phase 3 studies is that they're often done in many sites. So in the case of Wayrilz, it was studied in many countries, the United States, plus many countries around the world. So you're testing it in different populations, different ages, patients with different backgrounds. So you really know and putting the medicine to the test to make sure it does truly work or not work. We want to know, in the vein of evidence-based medicine, as you say, Jonathan, we really want to know, does it work when it's really put to the test, that answer was a resounding yes for Wayrilz, fortunately, in terms of raising platelet counts. But for sure, that's why we do these kind of large studies, because we want to know by evidence-based medicine that it is indeed successful in the way we are hoping for.
Good. Thank you for reinforcing this. It's so important for our audience to understand the gold standard that we've had in the United States, which has been a gold standard around the world, to have these different phases of clinical trials to make sure that a medicine is effective and safe. And of course, all medicines have side effects, and we have to be careful of those, but they're tested and we know them. Dr. Mehta, before we leave today, what haven't I asked, or what message would you like to leave with people before we end today?
Yeah, so just the other thing that I think is important for anybody interested or interested listeners or those affected by the condition to know is that side effects can happen. Those are also part of the studies as well, like you mentioned also. And so some of the key side effects that people should know, and you can also read more about it on the website you mentioned, wayrilz.com, but nausea, abdominal pain, headache, diarrhea are some of the symptoms. People are also monitored for signs of infection, including serious infection, liver problems. So we watch the liver function test to make sure the medicine is staying safe in that regard. And the last main one to know about is that women of childbearing age. So women of childbearing age who have ITP, because ITP can affect all ages, by the way, children to late adults. Wayrilz is approved only for adult patients, as I mentioned earlier, but women of childbearing age should be on effective contraception while on Wayrilz and for at least 1 week after the last dose they take of Wayrilz. And those women that are taking Wayrilz or considering starting Wayrilz, we do recommend checking a pregnancy test first to make sure we understand the situation medically before they potentially begin the therapy. Like any therapy, of course, talk to your individual hematologist, your medical physician, your provider to know if it's right for your specific case, because of course Wayrilz may not be the right treatment for every ITP patient out there. But that's like between the benefit you can get, the exciting breakthrough we now have with this BTK pathway being inhibited, this immune dysregulation that we can correct by giving Wayrilz and getting to the root cause of the problem. These are really some of the big messages that I wanted to share with your viewers and your listeners that is really a big breakthrough in the world of ITP and blood disorders.
Good. Very exciting. Thanks so much for being with us today, Doctor.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Good. So we've been talking with Amit Mehta, MD. He's a board-certified hematologist and medical oncologist. He's currently in private practice at Premier Hematology and Oncology in Cary, North Carolina. His primary clinical interests are in benign and malignant hematology, and he's done clinical research, and he's been published in Lancet, the Journal of National Cancer Institute, and the Annals of Hematology. If you want to learn more about this medicine, you can go again to wayrilz.com. That's WAYRILZ.com. Before we leave, we want to keep bringing you the stories and insights you love. Help us, please, by leaving a 5-star review on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify, or wherever you're listening to us. It helps other dedicated listeners like you discover the show. This has been Jonathan Marks with Go to Health, and as we say at the end of every show, go to health. Take care. We'll see you again next time. Bye. Thank you for tuning in today to Go to Health. You are one of almost 10,000 people per day who enjoy the evidence-based health information offered by our guest health experts. You can watch us on our website and YouTube and listen to us on 8 podcast networks. Be sure to join Jonathan Marks in our upcoming shows each week. If you like our show, please share this episode with your friends and colleagues. You can subscribe to the show, join our email list, send us feedback, browse through the online store, and view our library of over 150 shows at gotohealthmedia.com. See you next time, and remember to elevate your life with Go to Health.